Order, shot fire, officer down, shot fire, officer down. Got a city officer down, shot fire.
223, be advised, we have a visual on enemy paratroopers at grid Papa uniforms.
Welcome to the Resilient Warrior Nation, a podcast dedicated to inspiring hope and healing for first responders, military veterans, and anyone facing PTSD and trauma. Hey guys, welcome to another podcast episode of the Resilient Warrior Nation. I'm your host, Mike Morgan. I'd like to welcome you to the podcast. And as I do every podcast, I'd like to explain why I wear the shirt. This is not a proclamation. Unafraid is the name of a company owned by a man named Eddie Penny. Eddie actually changed the entire trajectory of my life. So we'll go back to spring of 2023. I sat down and watched a podcast episode of the Sean Ryan Show in which Eddie was a guest. Eddie's a former SEAL, Team 6 guy, Dev Gru guy, for those of you in the know. And Eddie began telling the story of the Extortion 17 incident. Unfortunately, that was when a Chinook was shot down by insurgents in Afghanistan and killed all 38 personnel aboard, including 17 SEALs. It was the largest loss of life in their community, one event ever. Eddie also told the story of losing his best friend, Jason Workman, in the incident, and consequently escorting Jason's body back to his hometown in Utah, and then finally putting him to rest at Arlington National Cemetery. As Eddie told the story, he was upset, rightly so, and I simultaneously began thinking about a call that I had 5 years before that I buried deeply. I'm a 30-year medically retired police officer, and that call consisted of a 2-year-old found floating in a pool. It was literally the one call in my 30-year career that I started to cry, but I stopped myself because men don't cry. As Eddie's telling the story and I'm thinking about this incident, I just began weeping like a baby. I had no idea what was going on at the time. I actually questioned myself, like, what the fuck is happening to me? And I quickly realized that the feelings I had been feeling, I was retired almost a year at that point. I had been kind of experiencing anger issues, rage issues, depression, just general unhappiness, and that is not me. And I could not figure out for the life of me the origination of these feelings. But as this was going on, I quickly realized that I had suffered some sort of PTS. I don't like using the D because it's not a disorder, but everyone identifies with that. So some sort of PTSD in my career. And then I realized I'd always mistakenly believed that PTSD was only caused by seeing your brother or sister next to you get killed. Mine was caused by being inside the most devastatingly intimate moments of other people's lives over and over and over and over for 30 years. So I quickly realized I needed help. I was not going to be this ornery guy going through life hating everyone and everything, and was not sure how I was going to go about it. I didn't think traditional counseling was going to do it for me. I didn't think I could speak to a man and woman sitting behind a desk, tell them the things I've done and seen, and they were going to be able to help me. So I began seriously listening to these men. I had heard it before and really started listening intently on these men, special force operators mostly, on different podcasts, speaking about coming back, self-professed broken men from war, and then a consequent healing journey using psychedelics. Didn't think it was for me at first, but really started paying attention, started thinking to myself, these are some of the strongest men in the world, mental fortitude-wise. They're coming back broken. They're talking about the healing journey. So who are you to be pessimistic about it? So I finally found that ayahuasca was calling, and myself and my wife ended up journeying at a place called Soul Quest Ayahuasca Church last March 1st of 2024 in Orlando, Florida. And over the course of a weekend, literally the first ceremony on Friday night, 4 hours, my life was changed. It's the most powerful, cathartic thing I've ever undergone. And I can't even tell you what I went through in this amount of time, plus words just stole the magic when I start speaking about it. But regardless, as I was coming out of the first journey, the universe clearly was speaking to me and told me that I was healed from my PTSD. It's not linear, so it's not like I'm this healed person that's got no problems. But for all intents and purposes, my PTSD was essentially healed. And my life's purpose was to go forth and help other first responders and vets heal their own. I said okay out loud, was not sure how I was going to implement it. But one thing I decided I wanted to do was create a podcast to do for others what Sean Ryan did for me. And in that, I bring on ordinary people who've done extraordinary things with their lives. We talk about their journeys, the highest of highs, the lowest of lows, in the hopes that you men and women who are going through it can identify with them, hopefully get inspired, see that there is hope, and you raise your hand and ask for it, because I promise you it is out there. So with that, I am very excited about my next guest. A lot of you may know him. If you're in this healing space, I know for 100% certainty you do. This is Trevor Millar. Trevor is the Chief Operating Officer and co-founder of Ambio Life Sciences. Trevor is a social entrepreneur and pioneer in Ibogaine advocacy and treatment. Trevor brings over a decade of experience supporting individuals through addiction recovery, trauma healing, and post-treatment integration. His background includes co-founding the Canadian Psychedelic Association and serving as chair of the board for MAPS Canada. He has co-authored peer-reviewed research on Ibogaine's application for trauma, TBI, and opioid use disorder, and has been featured in award-winning documentaries including Dosed and In Waves and War. Grounded in personal experience and guided by a philosophical approach to healing, Trevor is helping shape a new model for ethical, integrative, psychedelic care on a global scale. At Ambio, Trevor leads operations, strategic partnerships, and client experience, bridging clinical care with system design, education, and public advocacy. Trevor, it is my honor and a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Welcome, brother.
Thank you, Mike. That was beautiful hearing your story like that. Thank you for sharing. Can I get an amen at the end of that story? It was really good, man. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I knew my job, so to speak, not that I have to, but I get to now tell my story in the hopes that it helps others. And I now know that what happened that day with Eddie Penny was I was watching this absolute warrior be vulnerable and somehow subconsciously was given permission to do so, because me crying in and of itself is miraculous. And it just led to this healing journey and me being here. If you would have told me a year and a half ago, I'd be hosting a podcast and I'd be speaking to, a co-founder of Ambio Life Sciences, I would have said you were high. But my life literally did a 180 over the course of one weekend, and that's due to this medicine. So all I want to do is bring it to as many people as I can. And kudos to you for what you're doing. I mean, it's God's work, what you're doing. So pat yourself on the shoulder every now and stop and do that, because I can't even imagine how many lives you've changed and saved. Today's episode is brought to you by Cutting Edge Testosterone Therapy, a veteran-owned, family-run clinic led by a retired first responder. At Cutting Edge, they help men and women rebuild strength, focus, and vitality through advanced hormone therapy, peptides, and performance-based weight management. Whether you've served your country, your community, or your family, Cutting Edge helps you get your edge back safely, professionally, and with people who understand what service takes out of you. Cutting Edge offers individualized care with no monthly fees or contracts. Learn more at cuttingedgetestosteronetherapy.com. Cutting Edge Testosterone Therapy, built by those who serve for those who still do.
Thanks, man. I give full credit to God because it was definitely outside of my realm of possibility, but what I will give myself credit for is sincerely praying to God as a young man, saying, please make my life have purpose and use me, and how can I help? And I did that day after day after day from a very deep, deep part of my soul, and turned into something miraculous. So yeah, all credit to God for sure.
It's unbelievable. I mean, it's such a noble purpose that you hold. And it's funny, I've had the same conversations with the universe. I get more of the universe presence than God himself when I speak in these journeys to him, or to it. But, essentially I said, I'm a vessel. Do with me what you need to do to reach these men and women. And we've had so many conversations about it putting me through everything it's put me through for a reason, so I could be here and have credibility with these men and women when I start speaking to them and they listen to me. And it's just an honor to be in a position to influence someone's life, as you know. I mean, it could be more powerful than someone sending you a message saying that you changed or saved their lives, and how many other people that extends to as well.
For sure. That's why I do it. The notes that I get, the texts that I get, it's a year later, things are still going amazing. It's, I saved my marriage. My kids like me again. I still don't drink. Amazing things like that. I would say, for me, God isn't a bearded man in the sky either. I'd say I would use the universe and God interchangeably, just that creative thrust back of it all kind of thing. Yeah.
I guess they could be synonymous. I guess I'm always waiting for that man in the robe to appear, and maybe it's never going to be so. It's going to be more of that presence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even so many people, when I on their Ibogaine journeys, I've heard, probably thousands of descriptions of different journeys now. And people say, and then I spent time with God. And I always ask, did you see his face? And there's never a yes.
Oh,
Nobody,
really?
nobody ever
Ah,
gets God's face. It's always,
interesting.
it's the energy. And it might even show up. There might be kind of a body whose feet you sit at and you just know it's God, but it's, I think there may be a personification so that we can interact with such a thing. But to me,
Right.
it's always just the grand, I think everything is God, the sum
Yeah,
total
yeah.
of all things together is God.
I agree. And I'm curious to see, I'm going to be going to Ambio in early 2026 for my own Ibogaine journey. So I'm
Really?
curious
I
to see
didn't
if I'm
even
going
know
to,
that. Oh, right on.
yes, I'm going
Cool.
through 343 fund.
Oh,
And
perfect.
I think tentatively, I was told it's going to be like end of February, maybe early March. So we have to lock in a date. But yeah, I'm going to be down there in your facility. I cannot wait.
Cool.
So pumped. Yeah, absolutely. So hopefully you get to meet you in person as well.
Yeah, man. Ping me before you come so I make sure
Oh,
that I do.
absolutely. Absolutely. Who else is going to get the limo for me?
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about young Trevor, kind of let people get to know you a little bit. Where were you born and raised? How was your family life, childhood?
Yeah, for sure. I'm Canadian. I grew up near Toronto in a town called Kitchener, Ontario. It was, it's kind of the suburbs and a very idyllic life, really. Not a lot of trauma. My parents are still married. My parents still love
Nice.
each other. My dad's a mechanic by trade. My mom's a nurse by trade. They both excelled at that. And then my dad owned his own business along those lines. My mother became a nurse practitioner. So I always saw them, striving to be better. And I was not a very good student. What I learned in school, as I said to some friends, I was just back in my hometown last week. I'm like, what I learned in school is how to socialize, and I'm still
It's a good skill, important
that's
skill.
still paying me today.
Yeah,
Networking and
exactly.
socialization. Yeah. So, but school really didn't teach me how to learn. It was once I left high school, I stumbled upon a book that really impacted my life. I broke up with a girlfriend. I had moved to the west coast of Canada by then. I moved to BC at 19. I lived in a ski resort called Whistler from 19 for a few years. A girl broke up with me, broke my heart. I drove to my uncle in Calgary, which is kind of in the middle of Canada. Canada's Texas. And my uncle, who I met with there, he's like, I was lamenting about the state of the world. And he said, you worry too much. I've got a book for you. And he gave me How to Stop Worrying and Start Living by Dale Carnegie. And I read the first chapter of that book and the weight of the world lifted off my shoulders.
Really?
Yeah, it was incredible. Just one
Wow.
chapter, I'm like, oh my God. And then that's when I learned books could teach me something. I had always been kind of a reader. I read a lot of fiction, but from that point forward, I just dove into nonfiction, everything I could get my hands on to try and better myself. And I didn't want to go to university. I knew I wouldn't excel there, but I had a chip on my shoulder and I'm like, I want to be at least as successful as my friends who did. So just dove into learning how to be happy, how to make money, how to, even into science like quantum mechanics and the theory of relativity, just anything that interests me. One book would lead me to the next. And I did a deep dive in my early 20s. At a certain point, I'm like, well, why am I reading all these books? Excuse me. And the answer came back, well, you want to be happy is why you're reading these books. You're hoping to learn something that'll make you happy. And I said, well, what do all these books say about making people happy? So I spent a couple of weeks thinking about that. And the answer that came back is the happiest people, or at least the people that I most wanted to emulate, seemed to be helping a heck of a lot more people than I was at the time.
Okay.
And on the surface, I didn't like that hypothesis because I didn't know where that was going to lead me. I'm like, does that mean I have to become a social worker or something? Like, what does this mean? But on the other side of the coin, it was like, I think this hypothesis is correct. I think I would feel really good if I could truly help somebody in their life. So I started looking at how I could give back, and I focused on Vancouver's downtown east side neighborhood. I moved from Whistler to Vancouver in about 2000. Focused on Vancouver's downtown east side neighborhood, which is called the poorest postal code in Canada because it is, and there's just abject poverty and a high rate of drug use. And I knew I had no skills on paper to offer, but I thought maybe that would be an advantage. Maybe I could find an innovative way of helping out. And that basically turned into about a 10-year networking and research project, kind of some fits and starts. In 2005, I really focused on that neighborhood, moved down there, made a lot of contacts, and started a company selling t-shirts to try and raise money for that neighborhood. Realized I had no idea what I would do with the money anyway. And ran out of money, put myself in debt on that little project, got a job working on cruise ships because I had been in the hotel industry, and then I had friends who worked on cruise ships. So I did that for a few years. I was a craze director on cruise ships, which is a crazy
Julie
gig.
McCoy over here, huh?
Yeah, it was a crazy.
The Love Boat reference.
I didn't have the clipboard. I never carried a clipboard. But the whole time I was on ships, I was thinking about the downtown east side. Like I tell people that I feel like I played the long game on the law of attraction, on how to help that neighborhood. And then I met a woman who became my first wife. I'm engaged to another wonderful woman now. I'm still very good friends with my first wife, Becky. But I got married in 2009, moved back to Vancouver, and started focusing on the downtown east side again. And in 2009, I had a meeting with a woman who was an OG of a kind of a social worker down there. She started a group called the Vancouver Area Network of Drug Users, and her name's Ann Livingston. I was speaking to her about how I might help out downtown. She didn't really know, but we had a great conversation. And the whole time I was speaking to her, there was a binder on the wall behind her that said Ibogaine on it. And I said, What about Ibogaine? And she said, actually, I have people calling me for that all the time. There was Ibogaine.
Were you familiar with that? Excuse me for interrupting. Or you just saw the name and were curious?
Yeah, for sure. So I had been exposed to psychedelics relatively young, as a young man. You know, I was raised in probably the same era as you with Nancy Reagan and Just Say No to Drugs. And that propaganda campaign was super successful, I thought, as on the surface. I thought I was going to say no to drugs. But there was this LSD stuff, and the Beatles liked LSD, and the Beatles are super cool. So I feel like I left the gate open for LSD. And the first time LSD came on my path as a young man, I took it, and it was fantastic. I didn't know there was any therapeutic benefit, but I do remember saying to all of my friends one time when we were on it together, I'm like, this is what adults have forgotten that has made the world so screwed up. Like there was just some kind of a therapeutic essence that was coming through. And when I moved to British Columbia, I lived in Whistler. I think we did mushrooms a few times in Whistler, something like that. And then in Vancouver.
Trevor, can I ask you quickly?
Yeah.
The difference when you journey with psilocybin as opposed to LSD, can you kind of contrast that? And
I think they're very similar. I think it's a very similar experience. LSD's longer. LSD's like 12 hours. Psilocybin's more, 4 to 6 hours, 6 hours on average, I would say. But I feel like the experience is somewhat similar. Some people would say psilocybin is more emotional. Like you might get more weepy on mushrooms. Whereas LSD might be more cerebral, up in your head kind of thing. Yeah, but I think
you prefer one over the other yourself?
Very similar territory. Pardon?
Do you prefer one over the other as far as, going deep and a journey? Like does one work better? I
think therapeutically, psilocybin's probably better. Because, especially from kind of a therapist point of view, if you're going to sit with someone, if you sit with someone on LSD, you're going to be sitting for 12 hours. And then mushrooms, like I say, it's kind of more emotional. So it might be able to help you do more excavating in the 6-hour period. I'm a big fan of that. A therapeutic dose of mushrooms is, take 3 to 5 grams of mushrooms, put on a blindfold, put on headphones, put on a playlist. There's a bunch of good psilocybin playlists on Spotify. I think the Johns Hopkins psilocybin playlist is one of my favorites. It's the one they've been using at Johns Hopkins for more than 50 years now. Like it really grew out of their Spring Grove experiments at Johns Hopkins, which was in the 50s even, I think.
I have to check that out.
But and it's got kind of a lot of classical music on it. I think the purpose of a playlist, especially when you're doing deep work, is you want it to take you to a place emotionally that you wouldn't go if the music wasn't there. So you could find a playlist that would be probably lighter. I think East Forest does some great playlists. East Forest Music for Mushrooms, that's a cool playlist. And that's probably a little bit lighter and a little bit more fun. But if you want to like do some excavation, you get that Johns Hopkins playlist going. And then there's some tracks that just go so deep. It's
Really?
crazy. Yeah, there's a Shiva track on there that's just outstanding. So yeah, I've sat with a lot of people for mushrooms as well. There was a period where I couldn't work with Ibogaine in Canada, and but people were still calling looking for help. And I said, I never wanted to be an underground practitioner, and I definitely don't want to be an underground practitioner with Ibogaine, because Ibogaine is potentially dangerous, and you don't want to hesitate taking somebody to the hospital because you're scared of the repercussions.
Oh, absolutely.
Where mushrooms, you're not going to take anybody to the hospital. You just gotta. They're having a rough time. You just got to get them through a couple hours, and there's no real danger. So I did sit for a bunch of people on mushrooms, but that's like, if you want to, I'm a big, yes, we have to honor the medicine, take it seriously. And mushrooms is such an easy entry point for a psychedelic. Like there's a graph that David Nutt from Imperial College in London put together. Once it was all the drugs and what's the most dangerous drug and the least dangerous drug. The most dangerous drug by a pretty big margin was alcohol. Most dangerous drug. Heroin is second. Heroin's behind alcohol, but all the implications of alcohol, it's the most dangerous. At the other end of the spectrum, mushrooms is the least dangerous. So
interesting.
The more beautiful intent you can put behind it, the more safety measures you can put behind mushrooms, awesome. At the same time, the way I used to do mushrooms as a young man was with probably a dozen beers around a campfire with a bunch of my boys, and we all survived that too,
Exactly.
So I am
a little bit of different intentions.
Yeah, but I'm a big proponent of people giving themselves therapeutic mushroom doses. Like have a loved one who can sit for you, take 3 to 5 grams, put on a blindfold, put on headphones, and then with that Johns Hopkins playlist, like your mission is stay with that blindfold on, unless you need to go pee, for the full 6 hours, and just ride out the entire playlist. The last track is What a Wonderful World. You'll know you're done when you hear What a Wonderful World. If you want to do some good work on yourself, that's a great way to do it. And
how come you advocate for the blindfold the whole time?
Pardon?
Why do you advocate with you to use a blindfold?
That's just one way of doing it. That's just one way of doing it.
Okay.
And I think it's a good way of doing it. Like if you want to dedicate yourself to a therapeutic session, like working on yourself, then keep the blindfold on. Of course, it's neat looking around on mushrooms. Wow. But do that another time. Do that too. But if you want to do a deep dive therapeutically, then I think a blindfold, headphones, I've seen some remarkable transformations with that.
Okay.
Like addictions ending, OCD, people overcoming OCD that way.
Really?
Yeah, super cool things.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that's just
always be careful, and I'm not advising.
Of course.
Get your medical advice from a doctor. I'm not.
Exactly.
But
exactly.
You want medical advice from a bit of a psychonaut? There you go. Take it for what it is.
That's good. You get what you pay for.
Yeah.
All right, so we're back to Ann Livingston. You saw the Ibogaine?
Yeah, so back to how I heard about Ibogaine is in Vancouver. One day I was walking down a street called Commercial Drive. It was one of my first times walking down the street. Commercial Drive is now my favorite street in Vancouver. I used to live, since then I've lived many years in that neighborhood. But across the road, I saw a shop called the Urban Shaman. And I'm like, shamans? Couldn't be. And I walked in, and sure enough, this store sold a whole bunch of kind of legal entheogenics and sage and things like that. And the plant I bought that day is one called Salvia divinorum, which I had never heard of, which is another crazy drug. It's called the divine sage. And anyway, that shop had a community around it. It had some chairs in there. People could hang out. And I started hanging out there. And it was in that place that I first heard of Iboga. And Iboga is the plant that Ibogaine comes from. I also heard at the same time that it was $500 for a journey, and the journey was going to last about 24 hours. And I was broke at the time, and I had no interest in a 24-hour long trip of anything. So
that's a commitment.
I somewhat ironically now said, wow, I'm never going to try that. But I think at the same time, I heard that it might be good for drug addiction and opioid use disorder in particular. But I never put two and two together for Ibogaine in the downtown east side until I was having this conversation with Anne. And I said, what about Ibogaine? She goes, I have people calling me for that all the time because there was an Ibogaine provider in Vancouver, but they shut down, but their website was still up. And on the website, it said, we're closed, but if you want more information, Anne might be able to help you. And her phone number was on there. So she was kind of getting constant calls for people looking for Ibogaine. And I said, let me follow that thread. So I found a source of Ibogaine. I gave it to a couple of people. I saw quickly, I had no idea what I was doing, and thankfully didn't hurt anyone. So stopped doing that. But my phone still rang. And I would basically tell people, you know, here's what I know about it. If you're going to do it on your own, you shouldn't. But here's what little I know about that. And you should really go find a provider in Mexico or something like that. It's basically how those conversations went for a couple of years. And then Anne called me one morning in 2012 and said, did you know there's an Ibogaine Providers Conference in town? I said, I did not. She said, well, I put your name on as a provider, you should go down. So I spent the next 4 days at a global Ibogaine Therapy Alliance conference ran by a guy named Jonathan Dickinson. And I met a whole bunch of people who did know what they were doing with the medicine, a whole bunch of, now I know them as kind of OGs in the Ibogaine space. And so I met a guy who became my first business partner there. He had apprenticed with people in Mexico. He had used Ibogaine to end his own opiate addiction, really wanted to work with it in Canada. It was legal to do so in Canada at the time. I still had this kind of pipeline of people calling me, and we decided, let's see what we can do. So the next people that called, it was a brother, a 32-year-old. It was the father of 32-year-old and 27-year-old sons, both addicted to opioids, plus the 28-year-old's girlfriend. We treated them over the course of a couple of weekends. It went really well. We said there's obviously a need for this. So we opened up my first business called Liberty Root Therapy Limited. Liberty Root operated from 2012 through until 2017. We treated about 200 people in that time, mostly for opioid use disorder. Learned a lot over that time. And in 2017, Health Canada changed the regulatory status of Ibogaine. So I haven't been able to work with it there since. It used to be listed as a natural health product. So something like vitamin C or something is a natural health product. It shouldn't be potentially dangerous. Ibogaine is potentially dangerous. So Health Canada realized it was misclassified, and they instead put it on the prescription drug list. So it's on the prescription drug list, but because it hasn't gone through clinical trials, it's not available as a prescription. So it's kind of in a no-go zone in Canada for now. We're working on that again.
Excellent.
So through that, after I couldn't work with it, like I said, I gave mushrooms to 100 or so people, I would imagine. And I also volunteered on a couple of nonprofit board of directors. So MAPS Canada, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies in Canada, it had a little Canadian branch, and Rick Doblin founded that in the early 80s or mid 80s in the United States. And he's really, Rick Doblin's another one of these guys who maybe can take more credit than anybody else for really trying to legitimize psychedelics as therapeutics in the modern times. And I also co-founded the Canadian Psychedelic Association at that time. Rick Doblin called me one day. When Rick calls, you answer. So I picked up the phone, and he said, hey, I've got this lovely couple in my living room, Amber and Marcus Capone. They started a nonprofit called Vets Incorporated. They're sending U.S. Special Forces veterans down for Ibogaine treatments. You guys should know each other. So we hit it off right away. Amber and I started talking frequently, and she was looking at, ways we could work together. And I thought that she just wanted to work in Canada. So I was, basically it would have come down to $100 million clinical trial. That wasn't going to happen.
Wow.
So she kept calling. I'm like, look, I don't see this happening in Canada. And then there was one conversation we had just before Christmas in 2020. And there was just something about what she said where I realized, wait a second, she doesn't want Canada. She wants to work with me is what she's after. So I called her back like 15 minutes later. I'm like, am I right about this? If I find a place to operate, you just want to work with me? It doesn't matter if it's in Canada. She's like, yes. I'm like, okay, well, that's a different story. Let me see what I can put together. So my now fiance, Brianna, and I, we're planning on going to Costa Rica anyway. We just needed to escape the COVID madness. So we went to Costa Rica in 2021, and I was looking for a place to set up there. I don't speak the language. I had no network in Costa Rica. While I was there, I was speaking to Jonathan Dickinson, who I mentioned earlier. He ran the conference I went to. We were working on another nonprofit that he started, where he asked me to be on the board of that. And I happened to mention this veterans group that wanted to work with me. He called me back a week later from Tijuana, where he lives. And he had a guy named Jose Inzunza in his car. Jose's a paramedic. He had an Ibogaine clinic running in Tijuana. And they said, why don't you move to Tijuana? We've got all the medical equipment required, got all the medical staff that understands the medicine. We can find a house, dedicate it to veterans. And I checked in with Brianna. She said, whatever it takes for the medicine. So we did that. We moved to Tijuana in July of 2021 and found a house, dedicated it to veterans. That Jose kept his detox house running as well. That first year, I think we probably treated 95% vets, with at least 90% of those coming through the nonprofit. Then I did a podcast with Sean Ryan that enabled a whole bunch of other people to be able to find us after we treated Sean Ryan. We treated Sean Ryan in probably February of 2021. And then I did his podcast April of 2020. Oh no, 2022 at this point. February 2022, April of 2022, I went to Tennessee, did his podcast. And then that debuted in July. And then that led to a second house doing this 5-day program that we've built up around veterans. We now have 3 houses doing this 5-day program, which we call the foundational program, which is basically for people who do not need to come off kind of serious substances.
Okay.
For those people, we have another program, our detox program. And then we have another program for our neuroregenerative program as well, which is for things like MS and Parkinson's. But as I'm saying all this, a lot of your viewers probably have no idea what Ibogaine is. So
yeah, we're going to have to get into that for sure.
Yeah, at a high level, Ibogaine is an alkaloid that comes from a plant called Tabernanthe iboga, which is native to West Africa, countries like Gabon and Cameroon. This plant has been used ceremonially for centuries in those countries for healing, for initiation. And there is a tradition called the Bwiti tradition that has grown up around the use of this medicine. And in 1962, in New York City, a heroin user by the name of Howard Lotsoff took Ibogaine. He had no idea what he was getting in for. His chemist buddy knew that he was interested in different molecules, and he said, why don't you try this Ibogaine stuff? And Howard took that, went on this intense 24-hour, 36-hour long trip, came out the other end, and he's like, wait a second, I haven't wanted heroin the whole time I've been on this, nor do I want it now. So that's when its anti-addictive properties were discovered. And Howard became a champion for the medicine, started the Global Ibogaine Therapy Alliance, established some standards of care over the years, got enough people to pay attention so that we now all know about it. And some clinics started opening up around the world where it was legal to do so. It is Schedule 1 in the US, Ibogaine Schedule 1 in the US. It was just kind of the sweeping Drugs Act of 1972, just made anything deemed psychedelic illegal, even though Schedule 1 means it has no medical benefit and it has a high rate of abuse.
Right. Impossible.
So yeah, so Ibogaine's like the most misclassified drug on that list for sure. Like you're never
Truly.
going to abuse Ibogaine. It's anti-addictive. It's kind of a notoriously hard trip. It's not enjoyable whatsoever. It's not recreational. And then it's obviously got tons of medical benefits. If it's, just for openers, it can end heroin addiction virtually overnight. But it's also
is that like a testament to the power of pharmaceutical industry that it remains as a Schedule 1 narcotic?
I don't think so. I think it's a testament to the power of bureaucracy.
Okay.
Like once they put something in its box, it's really hard to get something out of its box.
Absolutely.
And I could be wrong. I'm open to be proving wrong here, but I don't think there is kind of a concerted effort by the pharmaceutical industry to keep Ibogaine down. I think it's more just the system is stacked against it. Like in order to take a drug through the drug development process, you need, $100 million to start. And unless you are big pharma who knows how to work that system and has that kind of money, you can't take it through. And Ibogaine is a non-patentable plant molecule. So it's not going to have potentially the billion, maybe it could, in long term, it could have $1 billion payout. But in the short term that a pharmaceutical company wants to see $1 billion payout for drug development, it's not going to happen. So those companies that would normally take a drug like this through the drug development process just aren't interested.
Yeah.
And yeah, then you could get into more, maybe let's look at the opioids in particular. If you have a drug like Suboxone or Methadone, which are opiate replacement drugs, so that is the current standard of care. If you went to your doctor, said, I'm hooked on fentanyl, they would say, here, take this Suboxone every single day for the rest of your life is basically the protocol.
Really?
So there's obviously a financial incentive to having somebody on your drug for the rest of their life. Whereas Ibogaine, you take it once for the most part, and you don't need to take it ever again. So
that's incredible.
The price tag's a little higher from the get-go, but you're not going to get that long-term payout. So again, it's financial incentive. Like all these corporations have board of directors who have fiduciary duty to be profitable for their shareholders. If you're going to look at the one-time drug or the everyday drug, you've got to, I think it's a problem with the setup of our entire system. I'm a capitalist at heart, but you also need to, I don't know if I'm a capitalist at heart. I think I'm a capitalist at heart, but I think it's more about using the capitalist system towards helping the world and helping individuals should be the bottom line and top line, as opposed to just making profit for the sake of profit. Because
absolutely,
what's going to create a better standard of life for everybody on the planet? It's not profit for the sake of profit. It's profit for the sake of betterment.
Of course. Yeah, and you're showing that with what you guys are doing. In terms of Ibogaine, is it easy to cultivate those trees? Could you, someone take the, plant them in the U.S. and
not easy enough. No, it needs to be kind of an equatorial region. I think the soil needs to be fairly acidic, and then it takes a long time. It takes 7 years for the plants to mature to the point where you can harvest the root bark off the plant. But Gabon in the last decade or so has really turned attention towards making sure that there is a sustainable source. I'm told that there are now millions of trees in Gabon that have been planted on different plantation type areas. And my business partner, Jonathan, has actually been granted the first and only export license for those plants so far. And we're trying to do that properly under the Nagoya Protocol, which is a UN protocol to try and honor the indigenous roots of this root.
Excellent. Yeah, it's sacred medicine, and it's beautiful to see you guys treat it as such. because it's so easy to take that and corrupt it and just use it purely for profit and not care about anything else. So I love that fact. So now you start the houses now. You're up to 3 in Mexico, correct? Are you guys still
3
at
doing
that,
the 5-day program. So 5 total, 3 doing the 5-day program. We do it in groups. So one house can take a group of at least 6 people. One house can take a 7-person group. One house can take an 11-person group. So we'll have those arrive Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday for 5 days. We also have a detox house that can take up to 7 people at it for people coming off substances. That house is crazy. It's got an indoor pool in the living room. It's wild. It's crazy.
Nice.
Ironically, it's a Scarface mansion now being used
Is
to
it?
help people off of substances. It's got a lot of Scarface in it, man. It'd be hard to believe the designer hadn't seen that movie.
That's so funny.
Then we have a house for neuro regeneration, which is for things like Parkinson's and MS, which Ibogaine is showing very good at treating as well. And we have a 6th house coming online in Mexico, hopefully in the new year. And we're opening up in Malta as well. Our first European location will be on one of the Maltese islands. And that should open in January as well. I've got a couple of months in Malta coming up in my future.
Good for you. Congratulations. I love to see the success. So as we're, we entered this war in 2001 and we start seeing more veterans coming back and just more and more with PTSD and various traumatic issues. How are they brought, or how's the medicine brought to them? Like, how does this kind of work now where, you're at the infancy of where we are now with treating soldiers and realizing how dramatic the results are? Like, how does that start?
Well, I think a lot of credit goes to Amber and Marcus Capone, definitely as far as being the Pied Pipers for this medicine and the Special Forces community. I think Mikhail Vega was one of the first Special Forces vets to take Ibogaine and see improvement and tell people about it. But that word got to Amber and Marcus Capone. Marcus had been a Navy SEAL. He was retired. He really didn't feel like he had PTS or PTSD. He loved his job. He didn't feel any real moral injury from what I understand. Like, he felt like he did a lot of good during his time deployed, but something wasn't right. He was angry. He wasn't the same man he used to be. He was drinking too much. And while he served, he was a breacher. So,
yep.
I was speaking to another breacher just yesterday, and it's not only, for those that don't know, you're breaching into the next space. So you're getting into buildings, you're blowing up doors to get into buildings. And it's one thing to blow up doors again and again on deployment, but the training for that, you go one after the other. And if you're not actually blowing up the door, you're behind the guy that's blowing up the door.
Yep.
So you just get these concussive waves again and again and again. And so Marcus, just something was not right. Like, even, veterans, like, imagine firing 50 caliber weapons for hours at a time. Again, training alone, it's intense. So yeah. I think Amber really suspected that there was a traumatic brain injury thing happening more than just the PTSD. And somehow she heard about psychedelics as therapeutics, and Ibogaine specifically. And there's a movie coming out on Netflix November 3rd called In Waves and War, and it'll tell the story much better than I do. Yeah, so good. But Marcus is, as a last ditch thing, said, I'm going to go to Mexico and try this Ibogaine stuff. And he did. And it was hard, but it was incredible. And he walked back in the front door after that. And Amber says she knew immediately that she had her husband back. So they said, we need to get this to our community. So they set up this nonprofit that's incorporated, veteranSolutions.org. It's a great nonprofit if you feel like donating money to any nonprofit that actually does good work. This is a good one. And they have now treated more than 1,000 people, provided grants for more than 1,000 U.S. Special Forces veterans, men and women, to go through Ibogaine treatment. And we have been kind of the primary Ibogaine provider for them since about July 2021 when we opened up. So I think I actually have the stats on my phone because I'm horrible at remembering them, but we have treated, so 92% of our patients are American, 44% are veterans, which is wild.
Oh.
But it
Yeah.
was,
Is that include first responders, or
I
that's
think
another
I
group
have
entirely?
that here. We've treated 1,000 to 1,500 veterans and first responders since Ambio opened.
Okay.
40% have traumatic brain injury, 25% seek help for addiction. So yeah, you mentioned 343 Fund earlier. That's Angela Scudin started 343fund.org, another incredible nonprofit. This one is sending first responders through for treatment at Ambio.
Yes. I myself am going through that process
Yeah.
right now. I can't wait to get down there.
Yeah.
So prior to Marcus Capone, did you realize the benefits in terms of treating soldiers and first responders with these PTSD and traumatic issues, or you were more concentrated on the opioid curing effects and anti-addiction properties? Was this kind of something new to you?
Yeah, it was new to me. I still remember the first veteran I ever treated was also a heroin user, and he's still doing wonderful, and that's more than 10 years ago now.
Excellent.
And yeah, like I don't think on one level we knew how great Ibogaine was and how cool it was, and we knew it deserved a lot of attention that it wasn't getting at the time.
Right.
At the same time, I don't think we knew how incredible Ibogaine was. It's really remarkable, the transformations that it's able to help catalyze in a person's life and the sense of agency that it's able to give to a person. Like, it's a very powerful negative pattern interrupter, no matter what that negative pattern is. The extreme example being heroin addiction. Like, you could say to somebody, well, why don't you just stop taking heroin? Well, yeah, easier said than done, right?
Yeah,
especially with the physical withdrawals that comes from stopping that. And that could go for almost any negative pattern. You know that booze isn't serving you, that porn addiction or whatever, the behavioral addiction isn't serving you. Why don't you just stop? It's easier said than done. But after Ibogaine, I feel like we all know what we should be implementing in order to make our lives better. And after Ibogaine, it's just way easier to not only get rid of those negative patterns, but implement the positive ones as well.
Okay.
And it seems to be like the traumatic brain injury specifically. We completed a study with Stanford University where 30 U.S. Special Forces veterans went to Stanford prior to coming to Ambio. They got they needed a traumatic brain injury, a diagnosis of a traumatic brain injury to get into the study. Okay. They went to Stanford prior to coming to Ambio. They got brain scans, a battery of other tests. They came to Ambio just for Ibogaine. Then they went immediately back to Stanford for more brain scans, more tests, and then a month follow-up as well. And the pre-brain scans were clearly showing traumatic brain injury. Post-brain scans showing it was largely reversed, if not entirely reversed, in some of those guys. They ran those brains through an AI algorithm that determines the age of the brain. And the brain, on average, got 1.37 years younger after just one dose of Ibogaine. The first paper published off of that study was in the journal Nature Medicine, which is a big deal. It measured PTSD, depression, anxiety, and disability scores. All went from almost off the charts down to next to nothing after just one dose of Ibogaine. The really interesting one there was the disability score, which is the test they use to measure how a traumatic brain injury is impacting a person. And immediately following Ibogaine, that score didn't change very much at all. But a month later, that score drastically improved for just about everybody. So Ibogaine stays in your system, continues to do some neuroregenerative stuff even after the fact.
It's amazing. So I remember growing up, we were always told that, especially in terms of drug usage and why you should not, once you destroy brain cells, they're irreplaceable and never regrow again. But now think science have shown quite the opposite. Is that correct? Like neurogenesis, you can regenerate, brain cells as well that were once after they died.
Yeah, for sure. Like
Or create.
that seems to be a bit of a myth. And I don't know, I'm sure there are certain drugs that you could do that could really like impact your brain cells moving forward. I don't think it's the ones we're talking about so far. But so when you talk about neuroplasticity, that's generally you're talking about the gray matter of the brain. We know that it's neuroplastic, but before this Ibogaine study, we've never seen the white matter, which is kind of the more ingrained information superhighways. We've never seen changes on that level of the brain. And after Ibogaine, the volume of even the white matter changed and had increased volume. So
Wow. That's incredible stuff.
US or Texas, I'm in Texas right now. Maybe I'll see him tonight, actually. Former Texas Governor Rick Perry, he has been public about coming to Ambio for Ibogaine treatment, and he has the means and the connections to get brain scans. So he got himself brain scans before and after, and his brain before Ibogaine looked like a regular 72, 73-year-old brain, starting to atrophy in certain areas. And his neurologist said after Ibogaine, his brain looks like he's got a 45-year-old brain.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, can you be any more dramatic than that? That's incredible.
Yeah.
Holy cow. Can you walk us through the process of you arrive at your facility in Mexico? What happens after that? Because, the biggest fear, I think, is the unknown, fear of the unknown. And, guys and girls they don't know what to expect. So just kind of walk us through the process, please.
For sure. So for one, you fill out an application, you go through an intake process. We ask for some medical tests, an EKG, some blood work. You get that to us. We provide coaching before and after. So you meet with your coach even before you reach Ambio for a couple of sessions. Then you fly into San Diego. We pick you up near the airport in San Diego in one of our nice Suburbans. We bring you down. We're only about 30 minutes from the pickup point, and you never go into downtown Tijuana. You basically hit the border, you hang a right, and then all of our locations are on the coast there. So yeah, Tijuana's obviously got a reputation. I've been living in Tijuana for 4 years now with my beautiful blonde lady. We have never felt unsafe for a single second. I'm sure the 25-year-old me could have gotten in a lot of trouble in Tijuana, but
it's there if you look for it.
Yeah. But that's not the kind of guy I am anymore, the kind of lifestyle I'm living. So overall, we've got beautiful houses in safe locations, big, beautiful residential treatment facilities. So you show up at one of those, and I'm talking about the 5-day program here. It's a little different for the detox program, which is longer, but includes a lot of the same stuff. But day one, you come in, we help you unpack. We need to search your stuff, unfortunately, just to make sure there's nothing that's contraindicated with Ibogaine. We do a circle to get to know each other a little bit. You'll be in a group of anywhere from 6 to 11 people. We have some food. Ambio's become famous for its fine dining. We have really incredible chefs feeding everybody all week long. Then that first afternoon, we do a sweat lodge, and generally a traditional Mexican sweat lodge or a Lakota sweat lodge. We've got a couple different ones that we use. Sweat lodge is, on the more feminine side of things. It's considered the womb of Mother Earth. The womb is where creation happens. So it's a great place to pray, to meditate, to get super clear on why you're here. On the more masculine side of things, it's where warriors would go to prepare for battle. So I look at it as there are 3 peaks to the week. The sweat lodge is the first of the 3 peaks, and it's a great way to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, which is another theme for the week. Then after that, you get back to the house for some dinner, an IV to rehydrate you, get some rest that night. The next morning, there'll be some blood work first thing in the morning. After that, some breakfast, into breath work. Breath is like this untapped ally that it's very good to get reacquainted with prior to doing something like Ibogaine. After that, another circle to help you further prepare. Then some lunch. Then you'll fast after lunch. And in the afternoon, you will have a one-on-one sit down with the on-site hosts / therapeutic support to help you further prepare. Then you get a massage in the afternoon. We'll give you an IV at about 7 p.m. We'll have a circle around a fire at about 8 p.m. where we'll give you the first dose of medicine. We'll ask that you're up in the treatment room on your mattress by about 9:30, 10 o'clock. And then it's basically putting on your blindfold and going deep into yourself for, 6 to 12 hours is kind of, if there's psychedelic bells and whistles with Ibogaine visions or auditory hallucinations, that's going to happen within the first 6 to 12 hours. And I find it very important to say that not everybody gets visions, and you don't need to have visions for Ibogaine to work for you. I have had plenty of people not have visions, myself included. And Ibogaine still gives you tremendous benefit. Sometimes I feel like the visions are even just a distraction while Ibogaine's working on other parts of your system. So don't worry if you don't have visions.
Okay.
It's all medically supervised. Like we have a nurse or a paramedic on duty 24 hours a day while you're there. While we're actually giving Ibogaine, we have a full medical team, at least one physician, sometimes more, plus at least 5 or 6, 7, 8, depending on the size of the house, other medical staff working there. You're hooked up to a heart monitor the whole time that you're taking Ibogaine. And you go through your experience that night. Ibogaine has been described as oniric, which means as related to dreams. So it can be kind of like a lucid dream type situation. If you are getting visions, sometimes they're meaningful visions. Sometimes it's just nonsense and chaos. But then the next day is notoriously known as the gray day. Everybody feels pretty rough the day after Ibogaine. You're just depleted. You're as tired as you've ever been, but you can't fall asleep because the medicine's still in your system. So you got to just get through that. Then you'll eventually get some sleep. And it's once you get some sleep that you start feeling the benefits of Ibogaine. And sometimes it's a gray day and a half. Sometimes it's a gray couple of days. So you really just need to trust the process once you embark upon it. But on day 4, some breakfast in the morning, leading into a little yoga, leading into a circle to debrief on the Ibogaine and get you prepared for the next substance we work with, which is called 5-MeO-DMT, also called Bufo, also called the toad. We use a synthetic version, so no toads harmed in the creation of our 5-MeO-DMT. But that's another profound psychedelic experience. It's very short. It's anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour we set aside for people on that. And
so some people go that long, an hour.
Yeah, we set aside an hour per person. It generally doesn't take that long, but we don't want to rush people through their experience either. And
like 20 minutes.
It's a different experience. It's, I think the Ibogaine is kind of the root of the earth. It brings you to things of the earth, yourself, your ancestry, things like that. Whereas I think the 5-MeO-DMT is more like the root of beingness itself, or the roots of the universe itself. So it tends to be more of a cosmic type experience. Again, not necessarily a visual experience, but just more of a somatic felt sense of something pretty profound. It's a deeply spiritual experience. It's been called the God particle or the bliss molecule. And it seems to help people really speed up their recovery after Ibogaine. They do seem to go really well together. Yeah. Yeah. And then,
so what do you notice if people don't use, like if you would just use Ibogaine and not have 5-MeO?
Well, some people don't. Like some people sometimes the Ibogaine says you shouldn't do 5-MeO. So we encourage people to listen to that. Some people after Ibogaine, they feel like $1 million, like they've never felt better in their life. 5-MeO is a little more tricksy, you don't maybe you don't want to take it and kind of mess up the feeling that you've got after the Ibogaine. It was a clinic in Mexico called Crossroads. Martin Polanco ran it. And he had a 5-MeO practitioner come work for him named Annie. And she saw people coming out of Ibogaine and she said, I feel like 5-MeO might be good for these folks. Martin was willing to give it a go. Thankfully they did. And it did really speed up the recovery process. Like Ibogaine's just like, you can feel like you've been hit by a truck and it can kind of pop you out. So I heard about that a long time ago. I was skeptical at first. The mixing of the medicines is the somewhat Puritan that I might think myself sometimes. And then I had a kid that I treated in Vancouver, and I did do a tiny bit of underground work in 2020 with Ibogaine. People the phone was ringing like crazy, but I would work with them for like 2 months before they even got in. The medical system there is really good. So I could get people switched over to clean, short-acting opioids so they're not using street stuff. So I'd really get to know them. Then I'd bring them in for just a week and treat them and then send them off on their way. So I did that with basically one person a month for a few months in 2020. One of those was a young man. He'd been using heroin since he was 14 years old. He was 24 years old when I met him. So I'm hesitant to treat people who are that young because they generally haven't been down the road long enough to really want the change. There's still a romance involved in the addiction, perhaps, but definitely was not there for this guy. He'd already been down the road for 10 years. He was ready for the change. So after Ibogaine, he was miserable. He was having a really hard time popping out. And I had heard about people using 5-MeO. I happen to have some. I said, I've got some 5-MeO. I hear it might help. Do you want to try it? He said, sure. So he took it. He lay back on the couch for a second. Then he sat up. He grabbed my shoulders. He looks at me and he goes, wow. And it was the most authentic wow I have ever heard in my life to this day. And he was instantly better. He was
wow.
Yeah, it was wow. He said he felt like Neo who popped out of the slime once he was out of the Matrix and was just completely reborn, you know?
Unreal.
And yeah, and that guy is still doing great as well, as far as I know.
That's great to hear.
It instantly sped up the recovery process. And for a lot of people, yeah, like if they feel amazing after Ibogaine, we say you might just want to go with that. If you feel super compelled to do 5-MeO, then you can do that as well. But, and then there's other people where I am like, thank God I have 5-MeO to give this person because they're really stuck in a funk. Like one guy in particular, if I had sent him home just after Ibogaine, I feel like he was homicidal and suicidal. He was he was in such a dark place, but the 5-MeO kind of instantly fixed him. I feel as though, this is weird to say, but I feel as though 5-MeO has the potential to exorcise some demons for sure. Like I've seen some pretty profound.
It's a rocket ship, man.
Yeah, I've seen some pretty profound energetic shifts, and energies leave a person after 5-MeO or during 5-MeO. It's pretty wild.
Okay, yeah, it's literally a rocket ship for those who've never done it. Like you smoke it, and what looks like you're smoking meth. It's a
fancy crack pipe.
And,
yeah,
exactly. And I'm like, man, I was a cup for 30 of them hitting this thing. But I was transported. For me, it wasn't, it was profound but painful. I was transported to me as an 8-year-old, walked in my house, and my father punched me across the room because he wasn't happy. He thought I was playing with a kid down the block that I wasn't. And it was weird. I just had like the most unloved feeling as a child again. And I remember just burst out crying probably like 15 seconds into it. And very powerful, but definitely not an enjoyable experience for me. But the medicine takes you where you need to be sometimes.
Yeah. I think that's the potential of 5-MeO is it can take you on the human spectrum. And the human spectrum includes heaven, but it also includes hell. And 5-MeO can take you anywhere there. And for me, when people get transported to more of the hell realms, and they're like, what was that? What does that mean? The best thing I can do to help them find meaning in it sometimes is just, aren't you glad you're not stuck there anymore? Like, what isn't this base level consciousness so glorious? Like, isn't this table just a nice solid table you can enjoy without being in that place anymore? So I think even those quote unquote bad trips, I'd prefer to call them challenging trips with lessons. Sometimes the lesson is just, wow, isn't life just awesome the way it is? And
yeah, exactly. It can be that simple. There's usually a lesson to learn, and it can be that simple.
Yeah.
So very powerful. All right. So now they do 5-MeO DMT.
Yeah. So they do 5-MeO, and then
treatment?
really just that last afternoon is just for chilling out after the 5-MeO. And then on that fourth night, you're in Mexico. So we have a taco night. So we have a famous taco night, incredible tacos. And then the next morning, we do a final debrief kind of exit circle at about 8 a.m. We have breakfast at about 9 a.m. or breakfast circle at 8, breakfast at 8:30, and then departure at about 9, and you're back to San Diego in time to catch a 1 p.m. flight that day if you need to get home.
Okay. I'll tell you, like that last day, do you guys call it integration or debriefing, or essentially like the same thing?
Yeah, like that last circle would be a kind of an integration circle. So we do 3 rounds in that last circle. The first round is anything that you might want to talk about your 5-MeO DMT. Second round is what are you going to do to take the lessons you've learned this week and implement them? And the last round is just a little token round. I won't
Okay.
do all the spoilers on it. But
Right.
then you get coaching afterwards as well. So those coaches are really there to help you with your integration. So you met the coach ahead of time. You're going to work with the coach out the other end as well. So you get at least 2 sessions out the back end to help you integrate the entire experience as well. And then we have ongoing weekly calls. We have an ongoing preparation call as well. So you can hop on a group preparation call prior to arrival. And then we have integration calls as a group in perpetuity as well. So one of our guys
Fantastic.
runs that. It's a veteran that runs that. Wonderful guy named Moose. A lot of guys will know him. And those integration calls are pretty powerful. I've listened in on a few of them, and just some people, that's kind of their new religion, is they just show up onto those weekly integration calls to hear people's experience and how life has been going for people and share their own wisdom.
I think the integration is just as important as the medicine. I mean, it's so powerful. And that last day, tell me if you agree or disagree with me, but I love the fact that when you show up, you're all strangers. By that last integration, you guys are talking about the deepest, most intimate parts of your life. Like, these people for the rest of their lives, and everyone is hugging each other like they've known each other forever. Like, there's such a bond. It's almost like a battle bond, to be honest with you. And that's how I felt after my journeys. I don't know if, you would echo the same sentiments.
100%. And that's what so many of the veterans say. Like one of the things in what's called the constellation of symptoms called the operator's syndrome is you lose the brotherhood as well when you're out of the military. So the group setting really helps get that back. I'm in Texas right now, and I am now friends with a professional athlete that we've treated, former NHL hockey player named Alish Hemsky. And we were at dinner last night, and that was his thing too. He's like, that's one of the things he loves most about Ambio is the fact that we do this as a group. There are Ibogaine places you can go in and do kind of your own individual program, but he's like, the group was so much. And he was a professional hockey player in with all of these veterans, and he's like, it's amazing the similarities,
100%.
He said he respectfully said, in our own way, we're both going to war as a career, and we both have this brotherhood as a career, and then that's taken away from you, and what are you afterwards? So they find a lot of similarities with each other. We've treated a lot of cool pro athletes as well.
Yeah, that's great. I struggle with that post-career myself. I didn't realize how powerful it was when I was in it, and then losing it is huge. But, with that integration, there was something beautiful about hardened men being vulnerable and crying and hugging one another and telling them they love each other. And, that's what we need more of, is other men allowing themselves to be vulnerable. And to me, that's my best takeaway and the most magical thing that's happened is the medicine has allowed me to become vulnerable and speak about everything, cry if that hits me, and not embarrassed about it. Like, I'm proud of. And other men see that. It's exactly what happened with Eddie Penny to me to change my life. And I know I've done it for others. And I'm just like, oh my, man, I'm no one. And the fact that I can have like somewhat of an effect on someone else is mind-boggling me. But it's those conversations that need to be had that's going to continue bringing forth this evolution, so to speak, with us, reaching, putting our hands up and asking for help because we need it. Because these things we go through and we see and our parts of are not normal. But it's our body it's the body's reactions are normal. You know,
Yeah.
it's
You're
normal
being
reactions to
authentic.
abnormal stimuli.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's the power of being authentic. And, you know, I would probably argue, who am I? Like, I've just met you, but you're obviously an amazing guy. But I think any human being, once they are finally authentic, it gives other people permission to be authentic as well. And that's what we need. We need to get beyond the masks that the ego puts up, and just allow what I think is kind of that divine spark in all of us to shine through a little more clear.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we certainly don't speak to men and women enough about it, but when you enter these careers, to me, if you leave without some sort of damage, then you're either a psychopath or a sociopath because you're experiencing all this trauma, all this hurt. I mean, I read something where a typical civilian sees maybe 2 to 3 traumatic events in their life. My first night out of the Atlanta Police Academy, within the first hour, I was at my first homicide scene. 5 hours later, I was at my second homicide scene.
Oh my
So now
God.
you told me I just filled my quota as a civilian in one night, 5 hours. And what about the other thousands of times that I've, experienced abnormal stimuli and, the pain of others? That's what has struck me the most. And I didn't realize how powerful that was, to be honest with you. We just call it compartmentalizing, but let's face facts. We bury and then we go on because you can't stop and acknowledge the fact that this actually hurts you. And, I'll go so far as to say we were EMTs in my second job, Suffolk County PD. And you walk in, you start working on someone. I don't even think of them as a human being. I cannot. You have to stay hyper focused. It's that thing in front of you. You start thinking about him as a mom or a dad or a brother or a son. Man, you're screwed. Your head, it just gets in your head, and now you can't focus. And now you're worth nothing to that man or woman that you're trying to help. So it's a very weird dynamic, but it's the only way that you could sustain yourself. It's self-preservation.
Wow. Powerful.
Yeah. I mean, I went to training last year with GBRS Group, and DJ Shipley and I got into deep conversation about individual journeys. And, we were talking about the fact that we didn't feel anything. And I'm like, brother, no matter what uniform we put on, we're humans first. We're supposed to feel. Being a human is all about feeling emotions and happiness and everything, the gamut. And what good is it if we feel nothing? We're just existing. It's not living life. I'm like, now I'm living in it, and I can experience happiness and you see the beauty of life, and it's beautiful. And, DJ was just echoing the same sentiments. Like, we are humans first. I don't care how fierce you become as a man. You're still a human being first, and you need to heal from that trauma that we do not allow ourselves to do.
Amen.
Yeah. So, listen, it's been fantastic speaking to you. I cannot wait to get down to your facility. Obviously you're an easy man to get in touch with if anyone needs to, but can you tell people how to get in touch with you? All the links will be in the bio as well.
Ambio.life is our website. My email address is on there. We're on Instagram at Ambio Life Sciences. I'm on Instagram at psychedelic_provider. In Waves and War movie coming onto Netflix November 3rd. Make sure you check that out. Make sure you share that with people. That's going to help change the conversation a lot around this work. So please get the word out around that. And for those of you that like writing politicians, I'm sure that would be helpful as well. And if RFK Jr. is watching, we just need Ibogaine rescheduled. It's not a Schedule 1 drug. It's maybe a Schedule 3 or a Schedule 4 drug, which would make research far easier. So please reschedule Ibogaine.
Yes, you'll be saving lives. Can you just talk about quickly the monetary component? How much is treatment?
Yeah,
typically?
It's anywhere from about $6,000 to $8,000, depending on if you're a first. We have discounts for vets and first responders. And that's for the 5-day program. And then the detox program, it can go anywhere from kind of 10 to 21 days, depending on what substance you're coming off. And it's kind of ballpark $1,000 a day.
Okay. And then for anyone that's on SSRIs, antidepressants, do they have to wean off prior to coming to Ambio?
You need to wean off those. We need you off SSRIs, most psych meds for at least 5 days prior to arrival. So make sure you do a safe taper off of that stuff.
Okay. Good to know. All right. Again, Trevor, thank you so much for being on. It was absolute honor having you on the show, and kudos to you for what you guys are doing. It's God's work. I mean, no other way to say it.
Thank you, Mike. It was a real pleasure getting to know you here.
Absolutely. And can't wait to see you down in Mexico.
See ya.
All right, guys. If you like what you saw, please hit like and subscribe, and we will see you soon.
Order, shot fire, officer down, shot fire, officer down. Got a city officer down, shot fire.
223, be advised, we have a visual on enemy paratroopers at grid Papa uniforms.
Welcome to the Resilient Warrior Nation, a podcast dedicated to inspiring hope and healing for first responders, military veterans, and anyone facing PTSD and trauma.